Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Hello Again in the year 2021. Thank God 2020's over. I'm joined today by Mandy Robotham. Did I say that right? Robotham.
Robotham, doesn't matter.
Robotham, yes, not Robotham. Anyway, thank you so much for being here and coming to talk to me and celebrate the end of a bad year and hopefully the start of a new exciting one, certainly for you and your books anyway. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, fine. I can't complain. It's all been a difficult year, isn't it? But no, I can't complain.
Well, you're bringing a lovely glow into my room. I'm feeling a bit washed out, but I'm going to blame time of year and bad lighting.
Yeah.
Do you want to start by just telling us a little bit about you and the kind of books that you write?
Okay, so I'm Mandy. I'm a former midwife. I was a midwife when I started writing, and I used to be many moons ago as a journalist. That's how I started off. But I worked in local newspapers and then women's magazines, and it was okay. Nothing mind-blowing, nothing groundbreaking. But I always had this yearning to write a book since I was about 9 years old, when I read a fabulous book called Harriet the Spy. And I wanted to be Harriet, who wanted to be a writer. So I used to sort of walk around the playground clutching my notebook and writing books that were very much like Harriet the Spy. So there was no original ideas going on there at that point. That all got shelved. I was a journalist, and then I had a baby in 1994. He's now 26, and he's got a lot to answer for, because the minute I had a baby, I wanted to be a midwife.
Wow.
And so sort of 3 years training, another baby, life gets in the way. And I was doing a few articles for the midwifery press, but nothing. And then the boys grew up, and I thought, there's just no excuse now. That excuse of I haven't got time to write that book, there is no excuse. So I joined a few local writing groups around where I live in Stroud in Gloucestershire, and that was great. They made me get writing. And then finally I decided to take the plunge, and I joined an MA group, Masters at Oxford Brookes University. And for 1 day a week, I was still working full time at that point as a midwife, but for 1 day a week, I blissfully talked books, wrote. It was just wonderful. And by the end of that, I didn't have a book then, but by the end of it, at the end of the 2 years, I had an idea for the first book, which came out as A Woman of War. And I basically worked on that while I was working. And everybody knows that there's always there's very rarely a seamless journey into print. But I had, got my stack of rejections, and nobody seemed to know where to put that book and which genre it was in. And then I happened to just send it to Avon Books, part of HarperCollins, and they took it on, and the rest is my history, as it were.
Lovely history.
3 books later, we're on book number 3 now.
That's so incredible that you went back into studying, just sort of driven by that passion for writing and reading, and that wonderful kind of, I'm not just going to sit and write a book, I'm going to do it kind of the right way, the proper way. I'm going to go and study the craft, so to speak. A lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, and I think what it does is you sit in a room of people, 15 people, and you all exchange ideas. And I like that bouncing board idea. I find it hard writing in a vacuum, and we all have to sit in a room on our own eventually. But I like writing in coffee shops. I like writing where there's a vibe around me. And I found it really good, when the tutor said, okay, here's a title, 20 minutes, you've got 20 minutes. I loved doing that. My problem was in making it last as long as a novel, and I was a good short story writer for a long time. Eventually made it to a novella, and couldn't imagine ever stretching it to 80,000 words. But you do, if you've got enough of an idea. You've got to work it. There's no excuse for just not knuckling down and doing it. People think it flies out of you. Some days it does, some days it doesn't, that. But most of the time it's hard graft, and not in the sort of going down a mine and dirty graft or anything like that. It's just, it is like pulling teeth on some days.
It is, it really is. And and actually the words that end up on the page, for every sort of single sentence that's there's probably 6 others that have ended up in the trash, or you pull your hair out over how to sort of, you know, describe a scene, and the reader will just sort of go, oh, that was lovely, and read over it, which is the dream, obviously, which is what we're trying to do. But for us, when we read back, it's like, oh, not that chapter again.
Yeah, well, you know, we know that you write 1,000, throw half of it away, write some more. You know, that's just how it is, isn't it?
But you have a special secret weapon, which you showed me before we started recording this chat, which I think you should hold up and show everyone.
Oh yeah, my secret weapon is at home, is my lovely keyboard.
Look at that!
My typewriter keyboard, because I'm absolutely nuts about typewriters. But sadly, although I started off as a journalist on typewriters in the very first couple of papers I worked on, after that we very quickly went to new tech and keyboards and PCs. And now I do write on a laptop, because the idea of crossing out half of it on a typewriter. But I do collect typewriters, and I'm a bit mad about them, really.
But you've got the best of both worlds then.
Absolutely, yeah. You can type away on this, pretend you're on a typewriter, and then delete loads of it as well. So that's great.
It is great. It's fantastic. So what is it about historical fiction as a genre that you're so enthralled by?
I love reading it. I'm fascinated by wartime and the sort of determination of people just to get on. That, I mean, you know, truly keep calm and carry on, which we've had a lot of this year, and there's been a lot of parallels in my writing this year, where we've been secreted away, and I'm not comparing it in any way, shape or form to World War II, which was far more horrific.
Yeah.
But the sort of isolation and the loneliness and the fake news and what we've had to rely on in terms of technology has its limitations, and so I think there's been a lot of parallels. But generally, I love reading about historical fiction. I read quite a lot of Tudor fiction. That's the sort of thing I like to read. I like crime, historical novels, anywhere where I can just snuggle under my duvet and take myself to a different world. And I think that's the appeal, isn't it? We all need a bit of escapism somewhere.
Certainly. Obviously, I write escapist more in the literal sense of whisking people off abroad, but I've always kind of, well, I don't know if I'd ever be able to write a historical novel, but I love the idea of it, like going to another time, because surely that counts.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Yeah.
How do you go about creating such authentic settings and characters? Do you just read a lot around your sort of chosen time frame?
Yeah, I read a lot of variety. So I'll start with good old Wikipedia, but with obviously the caveat that you've got to check it all out. Yeah. So I'll start with that and trying to find a timeline and general landmarks in the facts of history. Then I usually go to some people that have written diaries or memoirs around that time, because that gives you a really good colour base. And unfortunately, in this latest book, The Berlin Girl, there was a lot of journalists doing diaries around that time, and so they are the best writers to do that. And so they're combining facts and the colour of the feeling of the time as well. And then I'll quite often read a lot of novels as well around that time, because you're not stealing. I mean, we all pinch a bit from somewhere. You're not plagiarizing those novels, but you are getting the flavor of what those writers felt about that time as well, particularly if they're writers from that country as well, because they know the background of their own culture. So that's what I'll do. I make lots and lots of freehand notes. I type out some, stick them in a book. So I've usually got one book for one sort of, where's my notebook? This one. So this is, you know, a notebook like this really has just got lots and lots of different bits and things taped in it, and that's my go-to book when I need to check out a fact, because quite a lot of the time I forget that I've checked things out.
That's great. That's like full immersion. And I think sometimes you almost need to know more than you're ever going to share, don't you? You need to be so knowledgeable so that if you ask yourself a question halfway through, you already know the answer. if that makes
Yes,
sense.
yeah, you get to the point where you could reel it off and bore somebody witless in the pub if you want to, or if they will listen to you, you can bore them witless about that particular particular thing. I also watch a lot of films as well, and there is some really, really good films out there, drama series, loads of stuff. Again, you have to take it with a pinch of Hollywood salt, but you can get an idea of what people were wearing, and you know, how they had their hair, and you know, the sorts of things just culture wise where they were. So yeah,
The little details.
yes, the nitty gritty I like to call it.
Yes, or the kitty gritty. We're talking about.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best things about being a writer. Is sort of setting out at the beginning to challenge yourself to learn something new, and then to tell a story about it. It's, you know, we get the fun bit of all the research as well. It's like
yeah, we do. Yeah. So I mean, at the moment I've just finished a book on the Berlin Wall, which we'll probably talk about later, but also the next one I'm going to Scandinavia, and although I've been to Scandinavia a couple of times on city breaks, I haven't immersed myself in it, and I've got a lot to learn. There's a lot of maps around, there's a lot of old maps, and you'd be amazed how many people will help you on the internet if you just put out an internet call and say, I need a map of so and so from 1940. Anyone can help. You know, there's someone nice somewhere who will come and say, yeah, I've got one. Here it is. You know, and they'll whap it over to you. So that's really good.
Never underestimate the power of Facebook and Twitter. Eh?
No, absolutely not.
In both a procrastination way and a helping you research way.
Yes.
No. Your newest novel, The Berlin Girl, which comes out on the 7th of January in paperback, but it's already available in ebook. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Excellent. It's actually set just before World War II broke out, which is quite unusual, actually. I mean, a lot of the stories that you see are happening, you know, when all the action is happening, so to speak. So what was it about that particular era that you wanted to write about?
When I was researching my first book, The Woman of War, I did a lot of research about how it came about, and you can't not research something like that with knowing how the Nazi Party came to power. So, and I was incredibly stunned at how they just walked in the back door, or they muscled their way in through the back door and then opened the front door and said, we are your rulers. And it was, I think I needed to know more for myself how it came about, because I don't for a minute think that the German nation was duped, but I think that they were persuaded in a very cynical, sinister way, that things were good. And you know, I've never felt that everybody in one country is bad. That's impossible. And I felt like I wanted to show how real people from any country could be pulled down that route. You know, hopefully we'll never see the likes of that again. We've learnt our lesson, but don't forget those people had never seen the likes of that, and so we couldn't learn from those lessons. It was the first time. We will hopefully never see the likes of the Holocaust again, but that's because we've had it and we know how bad humanity can get. We need not to go back to that.
True.
So I think that was my thing, is I needed to know more about how it came about, and I needed a character like a British journalist to come in with fresh eyes, and say, wow, what's going on here, and also somebody who's got a reason to go delving into various stories.
For those that don't know, just give us a brief synopsis.
So it's about Georgia Young. She writes under the name of George Young because of the prejudice surrounding female reporters at that time, and she works hard back in England to get her first posting in Berlin in the time, and she's going out as a junior to the bureau chief, but in fact it happens that she needs to sort of work on her own quite a lot, and she goes out with another journalist who's a bit snooty, called Max Spender, and he's from the Daily Telegraph, and they're sent out together to sort of reorientate themselves, and it's really how they immerse themselves into the press pack and get themselves immersed into uncovering a story, which can have big repercussions in later years.
Exciting.
Well, hopefully.
So generally, when you're thinking generally about stories, do you come across things while you're researching that inspire new stories? Are you kind of always, do you have, like me, are you getting like ideas knocking on your head all the time saying, tell a story about me, or this idea,
Yes,
or
yes. So I usually have two main characters, but then other characters will push their way in, and they just, it's impossible not to, to push them out of the door. And one of the ones in the new book was Rod Faber, who is completely fictional journalist for the New York Times, but he was probably based on some of the memoirs that I've been reading. Physically, I think I probably had in mind Bill Bryson when I was looking at, because I love Bill Bryson, and I think he's just, a lovely sort of bear hug of a man. And so, sorry, Mr. Bryson, but he was sort of my visual reminder that every time Rod came knocking at the door, he, there he was, and I couldn't stop him coming in. So he made much more of an impact on the book than I originally had planned.
They do that, don't they, characters?
Yes, they do.
They have a habit of...
they just won't let themselves go away. So, sorry, I'm having to plug in my computer because it's running out of power. Very not very good of me to do. So, sorry, just let me do this.
Okay.
Otherwise we run out of power.
In the Zoom era.
Yes. Right, I'm done. So yeah, my characters, I'm not a planner. I will do a synopsis for my editor, and we knock around a few ideas, and then I'll print out that synopsis and have it in my book. But it can veer off quite wildly into that. So I usually have a beginning, I have an end. Beyond that, I open up the computer, and that's just it. I go with my research book next to me. I don't do meticulous planning or post-it notes, or I've tried. I just
I'm the same. I've tried. I sort of look at other writers and I think, I wish that I had your sort of a brain that could hold all that in and be able to look at a wall of post-its and make sense of it and have, but I find it I just have a list of moments and then a sort of some plot points like you, and that's about it. I like to know how it's going to end, and I like to know what the big scenes are going to be, but that's it. And that, like you say, it generally changes as well.
Yeah, I like to know what my epilogue's going to say, and quite often I'll write the epilogue right at the beginning. It might change again, but I will quite often write it so that I feel like I've got my curve to go to work towards.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from that, and I think it's probably because I'm sort of a mobile writer as well, because I write in coffee shops and on trains and things like that. I can't take an entire wall of post-its with me. I've just got my book, and I'll scribble sometimes ideas in that, and I know I'm ready to write when I can't hold back a scene. It's just bursting to come out, and that I feel like that's it. I'm ready to start now. Stop the research.
That's the magic moment.
That's the magic moment, yeah.
Now, we were talking earlier about the fact that you're sort of working across 3 books at once, which is just crazy. What can you tell us about your next novel, which The Girl Behind the Wall, which, will that be number 4 or number 5?
That will be number 4, and that comes out in September this year, 2021. And this time I'm taking a bit of a break from World War II, and I'm going into 1961 to 63, which is really exciting for me because I love the 60s. And I'm sticking with Berlin and telling a story about the raising of the Berlin Wall, which again was just something I knew very little about, and then was very shocked to discover that it went up in one night. I thought, how did that happen? So I found out how that happened, and out came a story.
Just seems extraordinary, doesn't it, when you think about it now, something like that happening.
Yes.
I mean, obviously Trump bleating on about his wall. There was always
but the idea that it could go up in secret and no one knew about it. I mean, in this day and age, maybe it wouldn't happen with social media and the spread of news so quickly. But then how do you corral half a city in barbed wire in one night? It's just incredible.
Well, no, it sounds like a fascinating story. And how far through are you? Are you kind of editing that one now?
That one is in the sort of early painful edits, as we like to call them. There's the painful restructuring edits, and then that will go through another couple of line edits and word and copywriters before it's ready. But yeah, it will be ready for the anniversary. The 60th anniversary of The Wall Going Up is August 21.
Oh, perfect timing.
Hmm.
See what you did there. Very clever.
Yeah.
Good marketing strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the thing with writing books, isn't it? Now it's not so much a simple question of just writing a story and hoping some people will like it. It's, you have to think about this whole 360 kind of multi-platform. How am I going to sell it to this person, and how's it going to work on Instagram? How's it going to work on, it's crazy, isn't it?
I know. I mean, my poor editor will tell you that I'm rubbish at IT. I really am. The idea of getting on Zoom for me is just about the pinnacle. But I struggle with that. I struggle with social media, and I'm still really, really slow at doing it. But yeah, you realise I've learned a lot over the last 3 years. I've learned a lot about marketing and how important it is, and because you can write a book, but you need someone to get it out there in the world for you.
Yeah, and what you were saying earlier about being unsure where to place certain books and certain stories, that and genre, sort of cross-genre books, I think that does come up a lot as well for people. That
Yeah.
We love your story, but we don't know how to sell it, so we can't take it on. I always feel like my heart sinks when I hear that. Like, you have to fit into a sort of a smaller box.
And I got a lot of rejections for the first book about that. We didn't know where to put this book that's about midwives, but it's about the war and it's about this, and where do we put it? Unfortunately, someone felt they knew where they could put it, and it's worked.
Yeah, incredibly well as well. Good for them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just taking a punt, isn't it, and doing something a little bit different, a little bit braver. Because some stories do sort of defy, categorization. Really, they do cross genre,
and they're the ones that we remember as well. They're the big books of the year. Or even something like Gone Girl, carved out an enormous new genre.
Exactly. That's the dream.
And there's 101 thousands of Gone Girls after it, and but she got the first one in.
Yeah,
so all power to her.
She was a trailblazer in the best way, I think.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, we've actually reached the quick fire part of the chat already.
Oh, great.
We're storming through. You see, this is because you're well prepared and articulate and good at asking questions. I'd be like,
and I've learned not to go on and on and on and on.
Right, I'm going to have to choose for you, unfortunately.
Okay.
My dream in 2021 is to be able to do these in person at bookshops again. But I know. Don't even say the words. It will happen. Okay. Question 1 is one life mantra or motto that you live by.
Write what you know.
I like that.
Yeah, I think so. Worked well with the first book anyway.
I think, yeah, definitely, because you need that confidence, I think.
Or at least start with that, and then maybe branch out. But at the start, if I'm doing a talk or anything, I always say to new writers, if I'm asked, start with writing what you know, because you're already 3 steps ahead, and you've got to be. Then after that, you can branch out.
Yeah. Have you ever sort of ventured down a route of research or anything, and then had to sort of tiptoe back out and gone, actually, no, I don't want to do that anymore?
No, because I think I'm fairly safe in it's anything scientific I'd be terrible at. I haven't got a science brain at all, and so anything engineering or anything like that, it leaves me cold. I recently read Robert Harris's B2, and I really enjoyed it, but I found the technical bits really quite hard to picture, because I'm much more of a tactile person. Knitting, anything about knitting, great. I can do knitting.
It's quite hard. I'm desperate to write a time travel story, but when it gets to the mechanics of time travel and who's where at what point, and can you see yourself, and my brain just goes, that cannot compute.
So I don't think I'll ever write about a woman physicist, because I wouldn't have a clue about how her brain functioned.
Yeah. We know our limits, it's fine.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, okay, question 2. It's a long one. Oh, if anyone watching this is yet to read any of your books, which one should they start with and why?
Oh, possibly. I mean, there's only 3. There is only 3. Lots of people have been telling me that the Berlin Girl, the latest one, is my best, and that's good friends as well, who've always been champions of my work anyway. But I think for the essence of me, my first one, A Woman of War, because you can't help putting the, Anchor, there's a lot of me in Anchor as a midwife, because for years I worked mostly on home births and sort of natural births. So for me, as a sort of as a midwife, that is the essence is me.
It's such an amazing job. I mean, kudos to you, because I don't think I could deal with all the blood. But
Oh, there's worse than
the
that.
screaming. That's fine. Yeah.
There's worse than the blood.
Oh God,
Put it that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
You lost me at blood.
Okay.
Right. Okay. I'm delving right to the bottom in the hope that we'll get some new ones. Oh, what's been your writing career highlight to date? That's a nice one.
I mean, it's a cliche, but holding the first book in my hand. I mean, just I thought I was going to burst. I thought I was going to burst. It was, and I've apologized to my kids already, but it did nearly hold a candle to having my babies. I've apologized to them. They understand. But it had been my dream for years, since I was 9 years old, to actually hold. When I was a child, I thought writers were so clever. I know now you don't have to be that clever, because I'm not a genius. But I just thought, to sustain a story through 80,000, 100,000 words, I thought, how can you do that? And then the idea that I had actually done it and somebody thought it was good enough to put in a book. Opening the box and feeling that first novel, I did smell the pages, I'll have to admit, to smelling the pages.
And just seeing your name and kind of, I wasn't prepared for how it would make me feel either, because I was working as a books editor then, and I kind of thought I was quite blasé about that kind of thing. But I remember opening, my editor sent me, as soon as they came into the office, she sent me one in the post, and it was just one on its own, and it was just magical. I cried.
Yeah.
I did cry.
Yeah.
I can't believe this is happening.
And each time it happens, I get, if I get a Swedish version through, I think, there's a big grin on my face. And if I see it in a bookshop, my mum's great. She goes to every bookshop and has a look at, and tells me that she's seen it. And my son in Cardiff, he sends me shelfies and things like that. And
love a shelfie.
Yeah, I love a shelfie. And it's out there. Somebody felt it was good enough to put in a book, and other people read it. It's a real privilege.
The magic. It is a privilege. I say that a lot, actually. I use that word a lot, but it's true.
Yeah, and I'm very lucky that, I had the privilege to be at many, many births where people were coming into the world and seeing families grow. And now I've got another job where, it is also a privilege that people will actually spend money and, or they borrow it from a library, which is great. But they will actually indulge their time, their precious time, to read your book.
Yeah, there's no bigger compliment, really, is there?
Mm.
I always laugh about how few of my friends have managed to plough through all my books. Like, stop writing them, Broom. We can't keep up. But if they're only going to read 1 or 2 books a year, then obviously they're not going to get to mine for a couple of years. Bless them. But when you sort of meet bloggers, and bless them, and anyone that reads really quickly and will read sort of a book a week, and then you tell your friends about those people, and they're like, it's another world. But,
yeah, my pleasure reading isn't that quick nowadays, because I only get to do it in the evenings in bed. The rest of the time it's work reading. So
I've discovered Audible in the last couple of years, so I tend to have Audible on from, I wake up and I'll have it on while I'm just making tea and breakfast, while I'm in the garden with the dogs. Like, I've always got a story being read to me, whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I tend to.
I like to think I would walk my dog with Audible, but I have to shout at him so much to come back that I can't quite manage it with Audible.
He's been very
in
during this chat. I must say. You wouldn't know he was there unless I'd seen him earlier.
Well, he is asleep. He's asleep next to me. He's gone back to sleep. But Yeah, I did more in lockdown, definitely, because I was walking for exercise. So I'd have a book going all the time. But yeah, you have to find the right one, don't you? Otherwise it can grate a little bit.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've had to give up on a few, but I never send them back. Like, because I didn't realize that if people don't finish and they return them, then you don't get the royalty. I was like, what?
No, I don't send them back. No, I would never send them back.
We authors have to stick up for each other.
Absolutely.
Right, let's do one more question. Oh, well, we've covered that one. That was, what do you want to be when you were growing up? And you've achieved that. Tick on that one. Okay. Oh, we'll finish with a foodie question. What is your signature dish? Do you have a signature dish?
Oh, signature dish. To ask my children that. Probably, I'm fairly good at cauliflower cheese. Cauliflower cheese, or I'm decent at homemade pizza. I can do a decent homemade pizza. My signature cake is that was always very popular at the maternity unit. Is a cherry almond. Was it cherry almond and what else do I put in it? Raisins, like a loaf cake, basically. Yeah, that always went down. Yeah, we're good at cake. Midwives are good with cake, I have to say. We survive on cake. Yeah, so they like, every so often I'll post them a cake through the maternity unit window now that I can't go in.
Oh, bless. Do you miss it?
I don't miss the paperwork. I'll be really honest. I don't miss the paperwork. I don't miss getting up at 2 a.m. in the morning and being on call, because I did that for so long. But yes, of course, I miss the families. Where I live in Stroud, it's quite a small town, and so I bump into those families all the time. It's lovely. And I see my friends. Yeah, I see my friends for lots of dog walks, and I catch up on all the gossip. So, hand on heart, I think I was ready to go after 20 years. Sometimes the grind can get you down. So I feel like I had seen everything I wanted to see and do everything I wanted to do.
And now you're an amazing published author.
Well, just really lucky. Yeah, feel really, really lucky to be in that position that, people are buying enough books, especially in this climate, that I've got the opportunity to do that. So I'm, really happy. I might moan about my edits and doing those, but
be a robot if it wouldn't.
It's just
be a robot
magic. Yeah, getting up in the morning and thinking that all I've got to do today is please myself by writing. It's brilliant. It's great.
Well, it's been lovely to chat to you. It's such a lovely sort of positive. This is exactly what I wanted to kick off 2021. A lovely, glowing voice of positivity, and yes, good for you.
Yeah. Well, ask me. Let's just hope we can get this all this rubbish behind us and plow on. But luckily, people are still reading books. Books have been my solace in this time. Escape to another world is the best. Whatever era you're reading about is just a form of escapism, and we need that. So yeah, long live books in whatever format they come in.
Definitely, amen to that.
Yeah.
So everybody who's watching, please go and buy Mandy's books, all of them. Doesn't matter where you start, you can read them in any order, can't you?
Yeah, they're all self-contained tales.
Amazing. And tune back in next Saturday for more of the same. Chats with authors extraordinaire.
Great. Happy 2021, everybody.
Yes. Happy New Year, everyone.
Bye.